Hello and welcome to another episode of Fog's Garage. Today I'm going to find out if I can make this screen behind me work. So what I've got is my laptop here that is displaying my YouTube channel, and what we're going to do is see if we can get it to show up on the screen. I think we're not going to have any luck with that because I got this from an e-waste file. So let's find out what we can do with this free screen, see if we can make it work. So the first thing I want to do is turn it on and see if I can get any sort of display out of it at all. My laptop did flash, so I think it's detecting the screen, but I am not seeing anything on it. Let's get a flashlight in here and see if we can find out what's going on. Kind of see a no network detected here. So what we can tell by this is that the backlighting system on this TV is not working at all. I don't know which thing is broken yet. Let's dig in there and find out what's going on. Grab the blanket, put it on the ground so we can protect the bezel when we lay it face down on the ground so we can get to all the screws on the back side. First step in getting anything diagnosed is we're gonna have to get that back panel off. So let's get that down and get the back panel off. Alright, well my camera cut out on me, but basically what I was working on last was getting these ribbons, which are actually the ribbons that make the LCD make the images. So you want to be very careful when working with these guys. Make sure you don't damage anything on these strips. Just be very careful, take your time on that. What I've done is I pulled the back, that metal piece we were talking about, up off of it. What I was doing during that is I was prying these little pieces that were along the side and the top of the bezel off and just lifted it out very slowly, very carefully. You want to make sure that you don't damage any of these plastic clips, if at all possible. So now looking at the screen, we can see we've got LEDs coming through, but we've got this white fascia. The white fascia is being held in by some snap points here, all the way across. And I think I'm gonna have to take every one of those out in order to get to it. And the other problem with that is that it looks like these snap bits, they're just push pin style, kind of like in cars where you have the trim pieces. But the problem is some of them are behind all those circuit boards that were on the back. So we're probably gonna have to take those off too. So we found the LED strips that are on the back panel after we got the light shield or reflector. Don't even know what it's called. That thing I pulled off. We'll go with that. Now that we've got that exposed, we can now see all these LED strips. The question is, how do we figure out how to find out if any of them are any good? That's where this tool I picked up comes in handy. This particular tool will allow us to test individual LEDs going through each one of these little touch spots that are evidently little LED test spots, or we can go all the way back here and test the whole strip at once. I'm going to start with the whole strip and see where we go from there. Found one dead LED already.
think on that top row we had 3 bad ones. Which, if that continues through this whole strip, that could potentially cause problems such an effect that the whole backlight doesn't work. Especially when we test. Let's try some more of these strips here. See if we can't get them to light up. Flickering on about half of that LED strip. Almost had one good LED strip. I was expecting to need at least one of these LED kits, so I went ahead and ordered one. And it just proved the way I'm testing works. So every one of these strips on this particular backboard is bad. The thing that concerns me is every one of them is bad. Does that mean that the power board took them out? Or does that just mean that all of them died at the same time? These kits aren't the most expensive thing in the world, but they're not exactly cheap. Guess I'm gonna have to take a bit of a risk and give it a try on this one. The LED kits for these screens are about $100 bucks. I was hoping not to risk $100 bucks on a theory here, but guess that's all we can do. The one thing I will have to go do is get some double-sided tape. It looks like these vertical strips that hold the backing light or the backing reflector panel up against the screen are also what hold these in place. You can see this one fell down. So it's supposed to go there. So I need to go get some double-sided tape. Alright guys, I am back. I have tape and tape. So I can tape while I tape. While I tape. Without tape. Anyway, I need to get all these LED strips off. So I'm going to pull those off. I did notice when I was looking a little bit more closely at these LED strips here that the thing that actually really holds them in is those push pins that I removed that were in the cutscene of the part where the camera died. So the push pins actually go through this and through that white reflective panel that I removed earlier. So it is definitely not the double-sided tape that's holding it there. So the double-sided tape was strictly to hold that a little bit more in place, but even that is also being held in place by the push pins. So this was just all overkill. Or for things like this assembly setup like here, where it's vertical and you don't want them to fall down like this. Because otherwise you don't need them. I don't understand why. Well, the one thing I will be doing is using the white tape to replace basically the white tape that I'm going to pull off, because it's probably not going to be adhesively strong to keep holding these in place while I do that. Plus this is a joint and you don't want that joint separating when the TV's all together. So do that and get this started. These nodules here will allow me to, or what the actual LCD strips sit on. So I have tape holding those down up here and on the same section on the other side. So pull a couple strips for that. And then what I'm doing is I'm pulling a little bit longer strip of tape and using that in the middle. So I make 3 different small strips out of the big roll of tape here and use that to create the box around it. I don't know that that's necessarily even needed, but I'm trying to replicate what they had just in case. It makes sense to me because it is around a connection point, so we'll err on the side of safe instead of on the side of script. They probably put it in there for shipping purposes, and my movement around on this screen is probably going to be nowhere near shipping container grade. So I'm going to work on that and run you through that as I'm doing this one final time. So first is just pull the strip off, put it over here, pull this strip off, and put it over here. Take a strip about that long and approximate thirds on that. Take the middle piece and tear that one in half. It goes on the sides. And tear off each of the longer strips. Right now that we've got tape laid out, we'll grab our final two strips, the plug-in button. If that'll even focus, probably not gonna be able to tell too much. Plug-in button, plug-in connector is on that side, and all the cables are on that side. So that goes there, and they both have a little plug-in connector that connects these two strips together. So you plug them in together, and then basically you just take it and lay it up against the screen. Not terribly difficult. First strip of tape. I am taking these copper points and leaving them exposed for any future needs. So I'm not covering over that, but I'm going just to the outside of that. And the reason why you took the outside or the in-between piece for that is you take the flat edge one and you can use it up against the LED strip for cleanliness, if you even care. Not that it really matters. Manufacturer put an extra strip of tape right near the feet location. You can kind of see it indented right here. And I'm going to put another piece of tape there too, just because I have. My guess is that because they don't have a hole for the push pins to go through, that's why they included that there. Then the final step is just like the testing step earlier. I'm getting into the test pins. I'm, in this particular circumstance, positive, where the red lead is the top one and negative is the bottom. I'm testing on this side of the connector, closest to the connection point, to see if I can light the other strip, since it doesn't go all the way through when I light. I don't know if that's normal behavior or not, but when I do that, it lights one strip up on this side. I test on the same strip, but closest to the connection, so that if it goes across, I know the connection between the two are good. All right, that one's good. Test again on the connection, and that side's good. Now that we know the LEDs themselves are good, the next step is going to be to see if the TV will power the LEDs themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it back down and reconnect the circuit boards with a couple screws, just enough to see if I can get this thing powered on and see if the boards light up the LEDs. Because it's really pointless if we've got a bad board and we put everything back together and then we have to rip everything back apart. So I'm going to start that, and hopefully we'll find some good news here.
All right,
I didn't install what's called the T-board, which is the part that connects to the LCD screen that's actually over there. I'm hoping it doesn't detect it and freak out that it can't see it and not do anything, but I'm hoping it'll just power the screen or power the LEDs without being able to see, per se, the screen's circuit board. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so you might see the circular pattern of the LEDs. What I think is going on there is when it first fires up, it has a little circle that spins around, and that looks a lot like that lighting pattern of that circle. And it might be cycling because it can't detect things. I didn't connect absolutely everything. The wireless isn't connected, or the antenna for the wireless isn't connected. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, the T-board isn't. Not sure why it's favoring that side over that side at this point, but I think the LEDs are working, so we're good to proceed. I'm gonna start putting everything back together. Here's the T-board I was talking about. One thing I probably realized a little too late, but thankfully I'm recording all of this so I can go back and review. I didn't mark which cable went where on the wireless. So the white wire and the gray wire, in my case, the white wire is closest towards the inside of the panel and the gray wire is furthest out. That's specific for this TV. It could even be different for any submodel. So try to remember to take a pen and mark on the label which one's gray and which one's white. It helped me a lot when I was doing laptop repairs because it's basically the same setup. It's a little chip and 2 cables run to it. Sometimes even 3, depending on the wireless card. So mark them before you take them off. Or record stuff like I did. Got all the boards back on, got everything hooked up, with the exception of the T-board to the screen, but I need to finish setting everything up on this side before I start dropping that on over there. So that's the next step. So my memory card went full this time. But what I did is I filled in all the rest of the push pins and their little retainers. So this is all set to go into something now. I will have somebody assist me with this, but they are camera shy, so I'll cut to after that. But all we're gonna do is take this and just lay it directly back down in, just like kind of how I took it out. But I don't want to break any of the ribbon cables or anything on this, so I'm going to get some help on that. We'll be right back. I'm going to start working the corners and setting these side pieces back in correctly. Turns out I can't do what I wanted to do, which was try to bring these various layers of light diffusal behind the LCD screen itself. I can't just scoop up under them. So what I'm gonna have to do is go get some gloves on, and we'll have to pay really close attention when we put the LCD screen back on, that there's nothing behind it. And that's what I was really trying to avoid with keeping these face down against it. I really didn't want to have to expose the LCD screen for that long, but looks like I'm gonna have to, because when I'm trying to put these pieces underneath and kind of hook under all this material at an angle, what's happening is when I get under it, it just kind of pulls away because it's such a tight tolerance. So it looks like I'm gonna have to pull these, put them on top of this, and then put these up against it and screw them down. And then they'll sit up against the LCD glass that's behind here. I was really hoping we didn't have to, but such is life sometimes. Now that the sheets are transferred from the backside of the LCD screen, what I first did was aligned all the holes on that second sheet. The first one I pulled up was just a big hard plastic sheet. It sat in this bottom track that is still in place on the bottom. And then there was 2 more sheets, or 1. And that's how you break things. So there was 1 sheet that also has tabs for the ears that are on the side of the front, it's got all the electronics on the back. I just made sure all those were aligned. Everything is tucked into the track. And now what we're going to do is install the surrounding track. Then I've got to decide if I want to lay it down or leave it set up like that. But with these tracks and with those tabs, it should hold in place enough to lay it down. What you may not be able to see, but I'm going to bring the camera in. The reason why I didn't want to bring this down is I can already see a piece of hair, some fluff. I'm not sure if it's part of the garage flooring stuff. It keeps filling up a little bit, but I'm going to have to clean this whole thing before we make these 2 surfaces together so that we can have the screen back together again. So, it's the next fun adventure. Let me get that put back together and we'll work on this next. Something I did note was that this etching does have a particular order it wants to be installed in. And that's because some of this stuff overlaps. The first one it wants to be installed in, top right here, as the top left overlaps it. And both the sides are after that, as both the sides overlap the top and bottom pieces. So keep that in mind when you're putting this stuff back together. The other thing about this, which may not be able to be seen very easily, there's a tab inside of this long black piece. And what that tab is doing is going behind the metal edge, there's a hole that these are fitting into. So it's kind of a guide, and then in addition to that, there's metal clips that go through these holes right about where my finger is. And there's several of them. So it's not just a push up and go on, it's kind of we're pushing it along and inside the metal, and the metal's fitting between that brace piece there and the outer plastic edge. Alright, after debating this a lot mentally, I have come to a conclusion that laying this down on that will not get me the seal and seating that I need to do this correctly. So I'm going to have to do the one thing I really don't want to do, which is directly handle this LCD screen. Since I'm doing that, I put on another pair of gloves because I want as little chance of any sort of fingerprints on that as possible. Any sort of fingerprints on the back side are going to show up as smudges, so I definitely don't want that, and I'm going to have to be extremely careful with this. They are extremely flexible, right up to the point they aren't, and it is a hairline difference. There's another screen that I started doing some learning on, and the screen was already shot, so I didn't really care. And I have this piece against the wall over there, and I didn't exactly handle it roughly, but it wasn't exactly gently either, and it put a crack right through it. For those of you that are wondering what a cracked LCD screen looks like, I'm sure you've seen them all, but the part that actually cracks is the part that I'm about to handle. The rest of this is all supporting that. This is the actual liquid crystal portion down below me here. And they are basically about 80 to 90% of the value of the screen. So if I break this, I pretty much total this whole screen out. So that's why I'm a little bit nervous about doing it, but I don't see any better options as far as doing it correctly. So let's hope that I don't break it. It seems to not have broken and seems to be intact, but I don't have the T-board and the circuit boards connected on the bottom, so I can't see anything on the screen. I went ahead and attached a screw in the top corners, and then third down and third up on the sides. And now I'm going to try to figure out how to flip it over so I can put it down on this again. Once I actually figure out how to do that. Flip this over, show the parts that I was talking about a little bit better. These right here are the circuit boards off the LCD screen. I don't know what they're technically called, but they're a circuit board of some sort that actually sends the display down to the screen and changes the pixels. So, the function is there. I have no idea what they're called. The T-board is this part right here, and it's called such that's because it makes a T. But we need to hook this up before we can tell if the screen is actually fully restored or not. So that's the next step, and then push it back up against the cardboard there and see if we got a working screen then. Well, I'd say that's a pretty good success. The last thing to do is just going to be to button up everything and kind of put it all back together. Alright, reassembly is done. Let's take a look at what it looks like now. That's not good. Guess we gotta take it back apart.
Here's where you can start to see the crack that has formed in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And that's how you unsuccessfully repair a 75-inch TV.